So we went through the slide templates, and given that this is the first session, given that this is the first session, something had to go wrong, and we thought this template was most likely to offend the projector. So, yes, highlights of new release. First, I'd like to ask the people in the audience a few questions, all of which are on the screen, but I'll go ahead and ask them anyway. Is anyone here in the audience willing to admit that they're still on DITA-OT 1.x? Uh-oh, this isn't a good sign for what's to come. Oh, my mic fell off. You know, I think the problem is that my wife bought me this fancy new coat. I'm not used to wearing a coat like this, and it's just throwing the whole day off. And she told me I need to look more professional. It's not working. Yeah. All right, so I'll ask again. Anybody here on Toolkit 1.x, 1.8? Got a few people in the audience.
Every time you say 1.x, it goes away.
I swear I didn't plan that. Well, I think...
I was thinking.
Originally, we didn't even plan to have slides, so...
Yeah, that's right. We threw these slides together this morning because we thought it'd be easier to talk with a picture up there. Okay, who here is using 2.x, 2.1 through 2.5? Most of the audience. Has anyone here gotten into 3.0 yet? We've got at least one person who said they're on both 1.x and 3.0, so that's interesting. All right, so a good number of people working on 3. That's good. Anybody here remember us talking about 3 last year, or has that all been forgotten because you were staring at the fish tank in the hotel? Okay. Let's see. Maybe it's because I have this old Lenovo and everybody else uses Macs, and so they'll have perfect. Yeah, it goes again. And it's flipping on my screen too, so I don't even know what I'm supposed to be talking about now. I'll come back in a second. There we go. Highlights from DITA-OT 3.0. For those who don't remember, sure, why don't we change the color scheme? Right, okay. And you'll go out of presentation mode. Who knows if that's related as well? Oh, okay. Highlights from 3.0. There we go. Map first processing, that's the big one. It doesn't affect every transform type, but it's a general redesign of what happens under the covers of the toolkit. Do you want to say anything about that?
So it was a very large architectural change in OT inside the pre-processing. So it's not a complete rewrite, but it just changes things a lot. The order and the way we approach the input set. Did we take it into use immediately in PDF2? I don't remember anymore.
It was used in PDF2 for 3.0, yes.
Okay, brilliant. So we adopted it immediately because PDF doesn't care about file names. In the end, you just have your single PDF output, and you don't see the final file names anywhere, or actually the source file names anywhere anymore. Whereas with, for example, HTML5, you do have that mapping. You just change the .dita to .html. So that was a good place where we could not experiment, but adopt the new way of doing things. We shall talk about future in the future slides.
Yeah, I'll say also, it wasn't a complete rewrite, but it was a complete redesign, really, of how things work. And some of you may know that if you start working on a project and then you work on that project for 13 or 14 years, you learn a few things. And you learn that you did a few things wrong in the early years. And I think the pre-process to map first processing is really analyzing everything that was done wrong in the early years. And that was, the processing model really should have been done differently. And we didn't know that until after we'd been in there for a few years. So it was a redesign. And I've seen from other tool vendors that are starting out in the last couple of years, map first processing is really how they do it.
Yeah, so yesterday evening we were talking among the team about the different conventions around DITA that aren't specified in the specification, but rather the conventions come from our four parents, or then the tool you are using. Conventions like you have a maps folder, have a topics folder, have images folder, or whether if you're working in a CMS environment, IDs are the important bit, whereas if you're working with files in a Git repository, the files are the important bit. And those conventions come from somewhere and we keep on using them, or then in some cases we try to move to a different way of thinking, and pre-processing too, in a way, was part of that. In a way, it goes towards the world of the CMS way of looking at the files, but it doesn't mean that we can't still talk about file paths.
Other things that were in 3.0, which was released at the TA last year, initial support for Markdown as an input and output, normalized data output, something that doesn't come up too often, but I've had it come up several times, and I've had people outside of my own team come and ask about something like that, and I get to point them to this nice normalized data output. That's basically data with all of the conrefs resolved, keys resolved, everything like that. And then the alternate input formats that have been proposed for lightweight data, HTML and Markdown for lightweight data, which was still really in an early phase last year when that was released. It's changed a bit since then. 3.1 was released this summer. We did not have a conference to celebrate that release, so we should probably
We did tweet about it.
Yeah, we tweeted about it. Yes.
We used Twitter.
Yes. For better or worse, yes. So yeah, released this summer. Had a few nice features, like the DITA 1.3 SVG domain elements, the SVG container, SVG ref, so you can reference SVG directly, rather than using all the weird workarounds that people used for the first few releases of DITA. Several nice enhancements to code block. Do you want to mention any of those in particular?
I kind of forgot what they were already.
I turned to Jarno because he implemented them, but yeah.
Line numbers and white space. So when you have a code block, you pull it from some file, but you don't have line numbers nicely next to the lines of code. So we added that. If I remember correctly, the code was there since quite a while, but I never told anyone about it. I remember sitting outdoors waiting for my mother's bus to arrive, and I was writing that code, and it was cold. And this was a few years ago. But then at some point I told Roger about it, or rather asking, you don't know about that? So there was a communication breakup there. And white space was something that, I don't know if Roger came up with it, but we made the white space visible. So you have some sort of grayed dot to signify that this is a space, because occasionally programmers care about white space in code blocks.
So in addition to that, enhancements to lightweight data support, the lightweight data committee has been doing quite a bit subcommittee has been doing quite a bit this year to modify the lightweight data format, to actually solidify it, rather than, when it was released last year, when the preview support was released, lightweight data was still more theoretical than real, I think, just because the element list was out there, but it was in emails, it was in presentations, it wasn't in anything that you could look at and say, this is kind of official. At this point, that's finally changed, so that's been enhanced. There is the latest hotfix came out just a month and a half ago, 3.1.3. So if you're using 3.1, you should update to that. It's perhaps noteworthy that 3.1 had a lot more fixes than a lot of releases. That's partly just because I started going through the backlog, and so it's not that there were things that had to be fixed in 3.1 itself, it's that I finally got around to addressing some of the long-standing issues that have just been kind of minor annoyances for a long time. So quite a few fixes over the 3 hot fixes that we put in there. So, 3.2, as I'm sure you were all aware, was released while I was talking about the last slide. Have you not seen the tweets yet? I think if we go, it's not going to be right. Oh, right, because I'm in presentation mode. It's hiding over there. There we go. Download DITA-OT. Oh, and with this new color scheme and font, oh, it's huge. Okay. There we go. So as you can see, 3.2. There we go. Refresh. Yeah, okay. 3.2 is now live. So, return to the presentation here. So we'll talk about a few of the, and George is, okay, yeah. Okay. We're going to talk about a few of the highlights that are in here. We've got a number. First off, updates to the DITA command. And I keep turning to Jarno because he implemented most of these things. He is the lead developer, and so I'll let him talk about the new things that he put in.
I don't know if anyone actually uses the command line tool, the DITA command. Well, few people use it, but being a programmer working on the command line, I like command line tools. So we added some features to the command line tool where it exposes some data that is available theoretically in a plugins.xml file inside the config directory, which probably everyone reads quite often. So now there's a new command, or it's not really a command, it's an option to the DITA command called -plugins, which lists all the plugins that you've installed into your system. Then the other one was --trans types, which, as you guessed, it lists all the transformation types that come from those plugins, including the built-in transformation types. And then not just Elliot in the back, but other people have also asked for an option for the installation or integration process where if you already have that plugin but you want to reinstall it or install a new version of it, you just do install the plugin file name and then --force, and instead of throwing an error message saying you already have this plugin, can't install a new one, it'll just force install on top of the old one. So in the future, when you make modifications to the built-in plugin files, and then you find out that this is the right way to do it, you can just force install the plugins again, thereby overwriting all your modifications, but then now you already have those modifications in your own plugins. These are not particularly interesting features. Most people might not even use them ever, but they are part of the command line tool we offer, and we should try and make that as user-friendly as possible, because these are low-hanging fruits, and those people who need them will probably be happier with them.
And the last one there that he didn't describe is one that, in terms of making it user-friendly, Roger, who is someone who cares about making this user-friendly, and does use this command line tool, asked Jarno to add, logging of uninstall and install. Previously, when you ran the installation process, it ran, and because it's a nice little command line tool, it did it silently when nothing went wrong. So it basically just ran. And now with this update, it tells you that you've installed a particular plugin or plugins, tells you what's been uninstalled. So if anything is added or removed, you get a note on the command line that says that they're there.
I actually objected to implementing this, even though I did end up implementing it, because I think if nothing went wrong, why talk about it? But this is really an enhancement, so you can see what you actually did, and it's in a way a verification that yes, your installation worked, instead of it just being mute.
Yeah. All right, a few more things. RelaxNG support. DITA 1.3 switched to be based on RelaxNG as the standard model, the primary model for describing grammar files, what you can do with elements and attributes. DTDs and schemas are generated from those at Oasis. But to support parsing based on files that use RNG, you had to previously install some extra plugins, get a fancy compiled version of the RNG processor, Jing. It was kind of a pain. It didn't work out of the box, which was unfortunate for something that was the normative vocabulary for DITA. That's finally there. After a long time of trying to get Jing updated, George had a patch that made this all work.
6 or 7 years ago.
Yes.
Like I told you, the line numbers were there for years.
Yeah.
Implementation for this, the Git commits were made 7 or 6 years ago, which didn't have a convenient way of bundling them for you.
George had submitted the pull request against Jing several years ago, and it had been sitting out there waiting for someone to accept it. So finally, Jarno set up sort of an alternate fork of the Jing project. So we have our own patched version of Jing. And now, as soon as this is released, I heard yesterday, Jing finally accepted George's patch. So we can throw away our forked version with our next release after all this time and just have support in there. But it means it'll work out of the box, so that's good. Another thing that will work out of the box is XDITA. That's the XML version of lightweight DITA. The DTDs are shipped now. That is still preliminary. It's not yet a standard. It could change before it becomes a standard, but it's pretty solid at this point.
So we bundled the DTDs, but we don't have processing for everything that's in there. For example, I think footnotes have some weird class-based definition in lightweight DITA, and we don't support that right now.
Yeah, I don't remember. There are sample files that are shipped in that plugin. All of the DTDs and the sample files come from the Oasis subcommittee that created those. So they're in the plugin. There's also a new parameter to control link crawling, which makes me quite happy because it's long been a frustration since DITA-OT 1.0 that there was no straightforward way to prevent the toolkit from crawling every link it could find on into infinity.
We've been talking about this for years, designing something and then throwing it away because X didn't work.
Well, and there are some parameters in the toolkit that tried to address this several years ago, and they were not very well designed, so they weren't particularly robust.
It's sort of, you have two levels. When you start reading the DITA files, how long do you crawl in the link chain? And then the other side of it is, what do you actually output? You can crawl the world, but you can still output a single HTML file. So that single old argument, try to maybe do both or not really.
Yeah. It was better at controlling output than it was at controlling the linking, the crawling. But that's a new one, so I'm excited by that. There are some secret new features that we'll address later today. I hope you're all excited for Jarno's. As well as the one Roger will talk about. Yeah. Some other new features sort of to round this out, because it is a new release. These aren't the most glamorous features, but I'll run through them quickly because we've got 3 minutes left, and I'm surprised we managed to take up that whole 20 minutes. It's because of those issues with the screen early on, thank goodness. So text-only entries in relationship tables. I think this was an issue that was opened in GitHub 6 or 7 years ago.
Yes, and it had the easy first issue label, meaning someone who wants to get into the development, this is a good way of starting. And then no one came up to us and said, I want to work on this. So in the end, we had to do it ourselves.
Yeah, I did it, and actually it probably turned out better that somebody didn't try it as their entry because I tried it. It's like, oh, well, I can add this, but now I see this other new bug that's related to it, and now I see this other one. So the initial part was easy, but it raised some other things that were hidden until we had this feature.
Yeah, software development.
So anyway, the actual feature there is that you can have an entry in a relationship table that's just link text with no link target. And that's most useful for something like a citation to an actual book that's not a web page. So you get the book title under your related information links.
Or something like talk to Mary.
Yeah, yes. Related information, go talk to Jarno. Another nice handy thing, PDF no longer says build successful when we didn't actually build a PDF. That's a nice change, I think. One that was just figured out like 2 or 3 weeks ago that's been bugging me for a long time. The new message when the grammar file is not found. I think ever since the beginning of the toolkit, if you don't have your specialization installed properly, it fails to parse, but the message, the Java exception that was thrown, referred to the source file. It said the source file couldn't be loaded or read, which was true. We couldn't read the source file, but that was because we were missing a schema that didn't be loaded or read. And so now I've actually managed to fix that warning. So if it's the grammar file that's not found, you get a message saying you might not have installed your specialization properly. That's been a frustration for a lot of people I know. Fairly minor thing, chunking is skipped by default for PDF because it doesn't make much sense to chunk topics for PDF in nearly every case. You can turn it back on for some edge cases. The hazard statement has formatting. Not yet there for HTML. That's a little unfortunate, but...
The hazard statement code was written maybe 3 years ago. I started in Munich, in back of the room, to actually implement it. The problem is hazard statements are defined by an ANSYS standard or an ISO standard, which are not publicly available always. So you write the code and then, oh, I don't have all the information, and then you forget about it. Yeah. But I thought, since we have the code, why not release it? I don't know which one we currently support, ANSI or ISO or something else. So if you actually want to use this and the colors don't match, then just please tell us and we'll try to actually improve the code so that you can switch to different standards. And also, at some point we need to add it to HTML5 too, because sometimes you want to have a web page that says, we'll kill you if you do it.
I want all of my and the last one, another minor item, that's something that has been coming up with some of my customers over the last year. With DITA, generally the best practice if you're linking to a topic or to any element that has a title, is that you link to the container. You link right to the topic, you link right to the section, something like that. Over the years, I've had people try to link to a title because they think, I want the title, I'm linking to the title, and I just say, no, 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 that's user error, fix your code. And to some extent, I still believe that, but over the last year, I've had a lot of people start using WYSIWYG editors, and they put their cursor next to the first character of the title, and they hit the key character combination that adds an ID, and then they link to the ID, and they have no way of knowing that they're linking to the title rather than the container. And so I had a lot of people who for years have been linking to sections, and all of a sudden their section links stopped working when they switched to WYSIWYG editors. And that was because they were now linking to the title. And so at that point, I realized this is going to come up more and more and more as we get more user-friendly editors. People just won't know what's there. So now if you link to a title, we'll do what you meant, regardless of whether it's best practice for markup. So if you link to the title, we'll pull the title text, just like we would if you link to the container.
So if someone has implemented a plugin that validates the content and sort of warns you about constructs that are not good, maybe then those plugins should warn you about this type of content.
You could do that, yeah. And we're now actually 2 minutes over, so we should get to whatever was after us. I don't know who was that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, yes, definitely one. Okay, thank you.